O death, won't you spare me over for another year? Traditional American song. The ancient Greeks knew a thing or two about the human condition. Anyone these days in full-time employment can sympathize with Sisyphus as he struggles to roll his stone up a hill, only for it to roll back down again. We can take some comfort from the fact that our labours aren't for all eternity. The sword of Damocles, hanging above our heads by a single hair, is as good a symbol of the precariousness of human existence as any man has created. There are many tragic humans in Greek mythology, all eventually reduced to the cartoons of the gods. A lesser character in this pantheon of unfortunates is the Trojan prince Tithonus. His lover, Eos, goddess of the dawn, asked the gods to give him eternal life, a wish they duly granted, but she failed to ask for eternal youth. He was therefore cursed to live forever, getting feebler and more decrepit, without ever having the merciful relief of death. A lot has been written on death by palliative care physicians. These doctors know a huge amount about helping people to die without distress, and their hospices and community services are rightly held up as the gold standard for end-of-life care. But, and this is a big but, in the UK only about 5% of those dying do so in a hospice. Half of us die in hospitals, and a quarter in old people's homes. Only 1 in 5 of us dies at home. When someone enters a hospice, the diagnosis is known, often end-stage cancer or a neurodegenerative disease, and the patient and their family have had some time to come to terms with their inevitable fate. This book is about all the other deaths. Sudden deaths, dementia, frailty, strokes, and all the difficult-to-predict deaths that most of us, thankfully usually in old age, will eventually face. The Danish philosopher Kierkegaard stated that life can only be understood backwards, but must be lived forwards. I have now worked as a physician and geriatrician for over 40 years, and have been looking backwards for some time, trying to make sense of where I, or more realistically, medicine, has come from and on what path we are heading. There is no frontier medicine in this book, no complex brain surgery, and no insertion of artificial hearts that cost as much as a Ferrari. The most expensive thing I've ever put into a patient's body is an intravenous cannula which might have set the health service back about £1. The ongoing, day-to-day, month-to-month and year-to-year care of the frailest of the frail is the work that I do and have always done. The limits of resources in health provision are much debated, especially around the time of general elections. The limitations of medicine are rarely openly debated. I hope to touch on these failings of modern medicine, an area doctors usually avoid discussing, at least in public. There seemed to me to be a need to make sense of the modern world and its attitude to death, particularly to death in the frail elderly, the fastest-growing population in the world, and not just the developed world. This is a plea for society to talk more about death, and develop a realistic understanding of aging, dementia, and frailty. For the first time in human history, younger people are looking at the enfeebled lives of their elders with some degree of dread. The impact of caring for parents and in-laws may now extend over decades. This is a call to arms for all of us to prepare and share more radical plans for our futures, and perhaps in old age, relinquish some of our considerable financial and electoral power. I once read that the only subjects worth writing about are sex and death. I cannot promise much sex in this book. I can promise you a lot of death. Death in all its forms. Death is sometimes tragic and sometimes comical. It can be heroic or pitiful. It can be accepted as inevitable by the dying and their loved ones, or it can be raged against and seen as a failure of medicine and science.